What's up guys, Joe here with another episode of my Prelude series. So every time I have something awesome and fun planned for the Prelude, something happens. And this time the transmission is having some issues. I'm not sure exactly what's going on. So today's episode, we're gonna diagnose it and see if we can't figure it out. So hey, let's get started.
Now this all started with a rattle coming from the transmission. And on my way to the shop, I was coming to a stop and it stalled. And now it stalls even in neutral. I've checked both the master and the slave, the linkage, and it all looks to be good, so looks like we'll have to drop the transmission.
First, I'm going to jack up the car. Always remember to be safe and never work under your car only using the jack. Next, I'm going to disconnect the battery and remove it. If you're a Prelude fan, you'll notice the weapon art intake from good old eBay. When I first got my Prelude 10 years ago, I was online looking for parts and I've always wanted one of these. Just working my way down, next I'll remove the shift linkage. There's a cotter pin sandwiching two washers. The metal washer goes first, then the plastic washer. Remember that when you go to put this back together. Technically, you can disconnect the bolts holding the slave cylinder and lines and keep all this together, but I will be replacing the slave cylinder, so I'm going to disconnect it from here and leave the hardline and slave on the transmission. First, hop in the car and throw it in reverse. Next, I'll take the linkage and the bracket off. Next, I'll disconnect the backup light switch. These just pull off, and I'll disconnect the starter cable and the transmission ground while I'm here. Now, working my way down, we'll need to remove the lower ball joint. I'll be replacing that, and I'll straighten out the dust shield while I'm there. I'll take the bottom fork off and this radius rod off as well. Alright, we'll drain the transmission fluid, remove both axles and the half shaft, and keep in mind the half shaft bolts are a special type of bolts. While we're down there, we can disconnect the rear engine bracket, the intake stay mount, the clutch cover, the center beam, and the rear engine mount as well. Alright, now I'm going to put a jack under the transmission and lift it just enough to remove the pressure on the transmission mount, and I'm going to take that off as well.
Alright, it fought me a little bit, but I got it out. And I noticed that the fork and the bearing are very loose.
Now I messed up here guys, and I should have used a jack to support the engine or use an engine support, so don't be like me and keep that in mind if you ever have to do this job.
It's time to install some new parts, but first, let's clean the transmission housing a bit.
Now using some brake cleaner and some rinseless wheel wash, I'm going to spray down and clean the transmission housing and prep it for paint. While the transmission's paint is drying, we'll inspect the clutch and flywheel. Now I'm still new to engines and transmissions and well overall cars, so I'm not 100% sure if the clutch disc should have wear like this or should it be full all the way around type of wear. I'm guessing part of my issue is something to do maybe with the throwout bearing. I know it's looking a little rough here. There's supposed to be a area right here where the fork actually connects, and looks like that part is snapped off and it's actually moving. I don't think that part is supposed to move. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, that's not what the new one does. So while taking the pressure plate and the clutch bolts off, I noticed that there was absolutely no Loctite. So I'm going to add Loctite when I put it all back together.
After installing and torquing the flywheel down, I'll spray the surface with brake cleaner and wipe away all the lint before installing the clutch and the pressure plate. Now it's time to put everything back together. I'm going to try and use this transmission jack to see if I can't get this thing back in. And of course, during this, the GoPro fell and I didn't see it till it was too late. today's episode of the Prelude series. I still have a lot more things I want to do, like color match some things, repaint the front bumper, sound system installation, and much more. So stay tuned, stay looting, and subscribe for more Prelude content coming soon.